Hi, welcome to the channel where we provide an alternative view to the common narrative. So I'm going to talk about a review of the recent announcement by Putin to place nuclear tactical weapons in Belarus. I believe it's not the whole story, so if you are interested, please continue watching. Welcome back to the channel. As I stated in my introduction, the British have decided to send depleted uranium ammunition together with their Centurion tanks to Ukraine, and Russia sees it basically as an escalation of the nuclear arms control, and in the response Putin has decided, or announced rather, that Russia will store nuclear tactical weapons in Belarus. And he basically stated that, or his excuse or his reasoning for that is basically the decision by the UK to send these depleted uranium ammunition to Ukraine. Now, I've talked about this before, and we know about the side effects of depleted uranium, and basically that it destroys the countryside or the area, the toxic radioactive material, in spite of what people say. And it also has a detrimental effect on the health of the soldiers and the civilian population. But I don't think that's all that is concerned. One has to go a little bit back about the start of the SMO, or even before that if you want, but let's start with the SMO. The first thing is that Russia and Putin reaction, or not actions, what they did at that stage was they argued that they are not fighting only against Ukraine, but against America and NATO itself. And they always consider that if NATO would get involved in a conflict in Ukraine, then there would be a nuclear exchange and a nuclear war. And the first thing that Putin actually did is put his nuclear strategic forces on high alert, if you may remember correctly. So what Putin has always done is that were precautions and prepared basically for anticipated responses. But that's unfortunately not the only thing. If you really look at the current aggressive behavior against Russia itself, the most aggressive nations is Poland, together with 3 Balkan states. And they are constantly on the scene, pressurizing for more support for Ukraine and against Russia, and gas and oil and sanctions and etc., whatever the whole caboodle. But if you also look at the behavior of Poland, they sent about, I think, a little bit more than 1,000 mercenaries to Ukraine, volunteers, mercenaries. They also gave about half of their stocks of T-72 tanks to Ukraine. That's about 200 units. They recently delivered a number of their Leopard tanks, German Leopard tanks, to Ukraine. It has also provided Ukraine with self-propelled, homemade self-propelled artillery, howitzers, if you call it. Also some anti-aircraft systems, which they manufacture, etc., and some other heavy weapons. And recently they have announced, and they probably have done it already, conveyed some of their MiG-29s to Ukraine. So it seems to me Poland is a staunch supporter of Ukraine. There were even agreements between Zelensky and the Polish minister Duda, or whatever his name is, about that the Polish will have the same rights in Ukraine as Ukrainian citizens itself. Then we also know about the American missile systems that was already stationed in Romania, and now there was also a system to be built in Poland. And Russia has always argued that these weapons can be reorganized or converted very fast into a nuclear attack, which then violates all the nuclear control armament agreements. And that was not, but naturally, US always basically denied that they have such plans, but who the hell can trust the Americans in any case? So Poland itself, throughout the conflict and even before, behaved as a very aggressive semi-neighbor to Russia, because Poland is actually buffered by the state of Belarus. Now, there were some NATO exercises in Poland itself, and say for the last 4 or 5 months and so on, Lukashenko from Belarus has constantly asked Russia for military support because he feared for an attack from Poland itself. And in response, Russia sent, I think about 100 artillery pieces and a large amount of self-propelled artillery pieces, tanks, and about 9,000 Russian troops, so-called trainers, to train the Belarusian army. There were lots of talks of Lukashenko also increasing the army, but not getting involved in the war in Ukraine. And, recently he asked even that Russia would place nuclear weapons. And I believe that the British decision to send depleted uranium rounds gave Putin a good reason, or pushed him over the edge to accommodate Lukashenko, and then decided to station the nuclear strategic weapons. Well, I don't know. The Americans are not concerned about that because they don't see any movement. But Putin said it will only be in June, July. So when the facilities are being completed, where construction on the facilities would have been completed, and when the weapons would be transferred to that. Now, naturally, this is a big no-no in the West. And again shows the hypocrisy, because American strategic nuclear weapons have been stored in, I think, Germany, Netherlands, Italy, and Turkey. There were 5 countries. In any case, that stored some of these nuclear strategic weapons, which are called the B-60 bomb, which is dropped from aircraft, and I believe the Russians will have a similar type of bombs and probably also artillery pieces. I know the Russians have artillery, 152 artillery rounds that are nuclear capable and have about a yield of between 0.2 and 0.3 tons of TNT. So they are strategic type of artillery pieces. And they date from the Soviet Union era. But apart from that, there has also been an escalation on the Polish side. And basically what the Duda, sorry. In any case, said is that he wants to build up the largest army in Europe. And currently Poland has about 150,000 troops, and he wants to double that. Then there's also a report that they're going to buy about 980 Black Panther tanks from South Korea. And they're also going to buy about 600 self-propelled howitzers and 50 combat aircraft. Now, if you look at the war in Ukraine, then this is the typical type of military equipment that you require, apart from air defense systems. So there's a huge escalation in terms of the military aspects of Poland. And it seems to me that the Americans are quite happy to supply the Polish regime, if you want to call it like that, and that they're basically going to prepare Poland as the next Ukraine. And it seems to me that Polish people are or Polish leadership is quite happy to do that. Also, the US is going to establish a permanent base, military base in Poland, and that's, I believe, let me see, I think it's the 6th or the 8th permanent base in Europe, and about 10,000 US troops is going to be stationed there, and these US troops going to play an important role in the coordination and I will call it, how do they say that? Yeah. The main task is to coordinate the action supervision of the US ground forces in Europe, operational planning, as well as cooperation and synchronization of US forces with the troops of other NATO countries. Seems to me then it's going to be a fairly important base for the Americans, basically a command and control center. And this from itself is a fair big escalation on the US part. Well, also said what the Polish has also done and so on is that, well, no, not the Polish, the Hungarian Prime Minister of Orban has also stated there are significant talks going on in the leadership in NATO, European and NATO, of sending an expeditionary or a peacekeeping force to Ukraine. No, I don't understand what the peacekeeping force would do in Ukraine, because Ukraine is at war with Russia and there are no peace talks going on. And if this peacekeepers, European, one-sided, enter into Ukraine, then the leadership of Medvedev and Peskov has already said that those peacekeepers will become basically part of the military or the enemy, and they will be considered as combatants and soldiers, and then they will be destroyed as if they are a Ukrainian army. Now, I'm not told, there were talks before that, last year already in March, April, and going on, and then it was called dead and so on because the war just went on, and now it seems to me that there is again such a talk, and that would be a fatal escalation. Also, there is talk by, let me see, I have to get the names right here. American Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg also reported that Ukraine stands no chance and that it should be split up between Poland and Russia. And effectively what he says is that, as American general, that Ukraine cannot win the war. That's a done deal. It doesn't have, just from a resources point of view, it is inferior to Russia, even with the help of the NATO countries. And basically, the Ukrainians going to lose. And then he suggested that then the remainder of Ukraine should then be partitioned into everything west of the Dnieper becomes part of Poland, and everything east of the Dnieper River becomes part of Russia. I'm not so sure where the hell this guy gets the gall to make such a statement, but that is how some of these people think. We know that a certain part of Poland was previously certain western parts of Ukraine were previously part of Poland. So there are a lot of Polish citizens living in that area. So one could argue, yes, maybe those can be incorporated into Poland as well. But on the other hand, is that, the lines? No. The bound? No. What are you going to... a country's borders. Yeah. Countries' borders have changed so many times over the last 300, 400, 500 years that my question always arises now, what belongs to whom and why? And it's ridiculous to go back anything further than before the First World War, the Second World War. And if you look at that, then I've made a video about the German, and Germany is not at peace. The Second World War has never been properly ended. And a large part of the current Poland is actually part of the original German Reich. So if Poland wants to claim part of Ukraine, then it has to give up I think it's 9 or 10 provinces of the German Reich back to Germany, which is a fairly huge part of their country. So the question always arises, when are you going to stop this whole story? I've watched a number of Russians and so on, TV shows, movies. I've read a lot of the telegrams, watched some of the other YouTube channels about them. And it seems to me what is important for the Russians is basically they can't forget about the Second World War. Now, we all understand a lot of Russians were killed and so on, but so were a lot of Russians killed during the Stalin years and before that. So I'm not totally sure, but it's stuck in their head and it's part of their culture and part of their way of thinking. So I would presume that if the Russians think like that, then the Polish people also think like that. And some of the Ukrainians might even think about this. Like I said in previous videos, these people are very cultural, nationalistic, family values, patriotism, history. It plays a big role in their daily life and in their view of the world. So in that respect, one might understand it, and I know I understand the facts. It's difficult for me to accept it as a concept of, call it intercultural wars and intercultural conflicts, which is actually because the Polish hate the Russians, the Polish hate the Germans. Why? I mean, that's a collective racist type of view. Shouldn't we are neighbors. Why can't we have peace? Why can't we forget about what happened 8 years? None of us actually lived at that stage. It's our parents and our grandparents that made the thing, and they're not even guilty because usually it's the leadership that make these stupid decisions and start conflicts. Or rather, not leadership, the money makers. Big power. In any case, the story is that in my opinion, the sending of depleted uranium ammunition by UK to Russia was just a catalyst for a lot of additional steps taken by Russians. And I've also stated before that where the Americans in Europe do so-called salami slicing politics, bit by bit they try to escalate, but the Russians go in steps. They tolerate until a certain point and then they react, and tolerate it and then they react. And this is basically the catalyst that put the ball above the line, and Russia and Putin reacted. And reacted significantly. And basically that's my review about the matter. It seems to me that there is a constant escalation Even it sounds like unrelated, minute, like I said, salami slice type of escalation. And the chances for a wider conflict is getting every day or every week a lot worse. And hopefully somebody sometimes will get to its senses and decide, whoa, we are going the wrong way. Let's step back. Because the Russians are not bluffing. Like I said from the start, they immediately raised their nuclear armament. They had the training of and the renewal of their strategic forces. They have expanded on them. They have modernized the weapons. They have activated them. They have now moved them forward to Belarus as well, some of them. So you can see there's a slowly development. And I'm not sure if the West really acknowledges or realizes what is really happening. All I can say is that, like I said, I watched some videos, watched some TVs, watched some interviews, watched some YouTube about the Russians, and they think differently from what we in the West think. Their train of thought is totally different from how we think. So unless you know the Russian culture, you will misinterpret signals. In any case, that's the story for today. So until next time, cheers.